Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Pirate Radio. I am your host who needs no introduction whatsoever, and you're still not going to get one. So, how's everybody's week been? Hopefully well. I'm gonna need a fan in here. There we go. Anyhow, let's get some things out of the way. We're still running our Toxic 10 discount code with our friends over at the Die Free Company. Get your AR accessories, grips, pistol grips, foregrips, little barrier stop things. They're on the 300 blackout. It's hard to see, but they have a new barrier stop, finger stop / sling swivel that is M-LOK compatible, made out of steel at least, maybe stainless steel. Go there, enter code Toxic10, save you 10% on cool shit you're already buying, hopefully, for your next AR build or what have you. Okay, so we got that out of the way. Now, to update you on the Jillian Michaels saga. Still a coward. Still haven't heard back from the team at all. Sent another email. I think we're up to 3 now. Still nothing. Not surprised. Again, the cowardice that exists on the right, even though she's actually a leftist, masquerading as someone on the right, as a conservative or Republican or whatever. She's still a coward. Whole team's probably a coward. No one really wants to take on any sort of argument, especially, if you're halfway intelligent, you would never take on an actual logical argument about any sort of thing, especially when it comes to like Muslims or Mamdani or communism or socialism, any sort of conservatism or any sort of like American culture, way of life, things like that, when your own skeletons are not really in the closet anymore. I mean, Dave Rubin's made a career, if you can call it that, of being a complete and utter lying shill piece of shit, really. A child-buying, horrific human being. And he's called conservative, while guys like Tucker Carlson are ostracized, or at least they try to ostracize him. You can't really ostracize a guy who's a giant platform, but I digress. In that vein, the mainstream right, Con Inc., if you will, Conservative Incorporated, the Daily Wires of the world, the Blaze TVs to an extent of the world, are all now engaging in active censorship. It always starts as some sort of like innocent thing. I've mentioned this numerous times before. Everything starts as some sort of protection, some sort of safety method. It's for your own good, or it's to help this group, or to help this person or that one. And it spirals into authoritarianism fairly quickly. And that's what we're seeing happen on the mainstream right, where you're seeing laws that happen being proposed, some of them being passed in the states because they couldn't get it done federally, that make it a crime to criticize the state of Israel. This is a very... this is all coming, and it's coming fast, and it's coming at you very hard. You don't have to agree with the people who are on the opposing right. Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, any number of folks. Pat Buchanan, if you want a deep pull there. Joe Kent's, whatever you want to say. But it's becoming Thomas Massie, the great Thomas. There was a great interview with Tucker Carlson with Thomas Massie. I think it came out 2 days ago. I don't understand how anyone can listen to a Thomas Massie and dislike him. One, as a human being, but two, just as a politician. You have to be some sort of dogmatic, just retard to dislike Thomas Massie or think he's like a bad guy or anything like that. You don't necessarily agree with them 100% on everything, nor should you agree with another person 100% on anything, because it's just not how people work. But you're going to be pretty high percentage with that guy if you're a right-leaning, smart, intelligent, halfway decent American. So these are the people who get ostracized, and these are the people who get reprimanded, and these are the people who get primaried um, by Connick, by the now Republican Party, who, mind you, here's the biggest issue with the Republican Party right now, and Donald Trump more specifically. We can talk about the Iran war and the ins and outs, and luckily it looks like it's coming to an end tentatively. Cautiously optimistic with that. We can talk about the ins and outs. We can even talk about how is this being done at the behest, in the benefit of the state of Israel. You can have these debates, and there's evidence on both sides, and then there's you can always talk about, well, even if the state of Israel is trying to coerce the big bad United States with our military into doing this military action, the powers that be of the United States government didn't have to do it. That is a somewhat decent argument, and really, I'm not mad at the state of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, or Naftali Bennett, or any of their leadership. I'm more pissed off at our leadership for being so coerced so easily. But that's an opinion. That's my view on it. That doesn't mean that the state of Israel itself is above some sort of critique, especially in my country. I can talk about any government, including my own, in a good or bad way. I can talk about a group of people in a good or bad way. It's very, very glaringly apparent to anyone who's not a fucking boomer that there is something existential and behind the scenes happening in regards to a specific group and the protection thereof. You can criticize Somalis, you can criticize Muslim, Sunni, Shia, you can criticize Qataris, you can criticize Iranians, of course, you can criticize Saudis, you can criticize Africans, you can criticize the penguins in Antarctica, you can criticize Canadians, Mexicans, Nicaraguans, Hondurans, Venezuelans, Chileans, any number of people, but there's one group you can criticize: Black, Christian, Catholic, Hindus. I saw a video of Hindus throwing cats in the air this week. That was, I didn't know there was a cat toss. It didn't look like the cats were enjoying it, if I'm being honest here. You can criticize any group of people. I commonly refer to Indians as dot or feather. Don't have to like it, but that's how I don't know how you delineate, because people will say Native American. Well, I'm a fucking Native American. I'm like a 5th generation Oklahoman and like an 8th generation American, legacy American. So I'm a Native American. Like, oh, well, no, we're talking about the people who were here when you showed up. Well, how can you be native to a country you didn't found, or a land you didn't name, or an area you weren't actually at? So maybe you're just American Indians. You hit the fucking lottery there and got conquered by the greatest people on earth who built the greatest nation the world's ever seen with all the protections, and now you have full-on rights just like every American. So you're not willing to give those up, apparently. So apparently you're just an American Indian, if that's how you want to be referred to. But you can criticize this group all day long. You can talk about how they beat their wives, they kill their women, they are on drugs, they can't handle their liquor, they're just bad drunks, they just want to fight, they got no asses, they got long hair, they got no facial hair, kind of an ugly race from the get-go. You can say anything you want about Asians, actual Asians, not the Indians, not the dots. You can talk about any group on earth, except there's one group that we're not allowed to even talk about whatsoever, not even allowed to have a questioning thought. They're above reproach, and now the legal system is trying to enact protections for this special group that shall not be named. I think you probably know who I'm talking about, and I am against any sort of that. So the censorship has to come in. What are they talking about? Well, they're talking about deplatforming. They're talking about restricting speech. It started on the campuses, if you remember, and a lot of us, myself somewhat included, but it always felt wrong about, you had these students, and it was very unclear if they were naturalized Americans or they were legacy Americans. It was very unclear in the reporting, but you had these students who were being either reprimanded, kicked off campus, kicked out of school, expelled. Some of them tried to be deported. Some of them were arrested. I forget that one guy's name. It doesn't really matter. it never felt right. I don't agree with what they were saying, but the mechanism of what was going on never felt right. That felt very anti-American. Um, but that's how it started, and how, it's only going to expand from. Again, these things start really small. You can sit there and you can go, well, hey, Harvard, if you want this federal money, you shouldn't be allowing these anti-Jewish or anti-Israeli protests to happen, and these pro-Palestinian demonstrations to happen on these college campuses, and Jewish students shouldn't be harassed, and somehow they're harassed because there's a protest taking place, which I thought was like antithetical to the right of, you have the right to protest, you don't have the right to harm. So it sounded like all of these Jewish students needed a safe space, which I thought we were against safe spaces on college campuses. I think even Ben Shapiro made a movie about it with Dennis Prager and Adam Carolla. No shade at Adam Carolla, but the other two, all of a sudden, you needed a safe space for your religious kind, if you will. That got weird. And so now it's ever expanding. It keeps expanding. And we have to fight this thing head on. And we have to stand up to it, as uncomfortable as it may be. Many of us have have a lot of Jewish friends, may even have Jewish family, may have none. I don't know. But this is not like some anti-Jewish thing. This is a freedom thing. This is a rights thing. There are no protected classes anywhere, not in this country. You can criticize anyone for any reason. It's just how this country works. It's called freedom of speech, freedom of expression. Especially, you can't have protections based on religion. And I know there will be people say, oh, well, the Jewish people, they're a people and a religion. That's bullshit. It's a religion. There are no inherently Jewish people. Just like there are no inherently German people unless you're born in Germany. And unless there's a state of Judea or Jewish state, you're Israeli who practices Judaism or not. Whatever. You could be of the cloth. You can be a practicing Catholic. It's just like you're not just born a Catholic. You kind of have to declare a major. That's not how that thing works, okay? So it's not a race of people. You're just a people who practice a religion. I understand why it's claimed as a people, but anyway. So you can listen to any number of, whether it's Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin, whomever, who have talked about here more recently. They're using the same tactics of, they label you a Nazi or a fascist or Islamo-fascist, or Mark Levin recently had a clip where he said, I have no problem with kicking Nazis off, deplatforming Nazis. It's like, you can't even tell me, whatever your definition of Nazi is, Mark Levin is completely fucked out. You can't honestly say what a Nazi is at this. You're using terms like the left did. You're taking that term, which Mark Levin is a Jewish man. I would think he would hold that term in some sort of like macabre regard, if you will, that this is a label for the most despicable. It's their racist at this point. To label everything as Nazi, you're Nazis. Okay, Mark, everyone's a Nazi because they don't agree with your agenda with the state of Israel and the Jewish people as a whole. That doesn't mean that they're going to start an SS and rounding people up and gassing them. That doesn't mean they don't believe in the Holocaust. That doesn't mean any number of things that Nazi actually represented after the regime was gone. So it's complete and utter nonsense. Everything is Jew hatred or anti-Semite. You notice they're resorting to name calling, just like the left did when it was about trans or George Floyd or BLM. You just got called racist or transphobic or whatever. They just instantly insulted you. It's the same thing happening on the right. So they're just like the leftists. So basically, you can say that Ben Shapiro is a leftist. Mark Levin is a leftist because they use leftist tactics. They argue like leftists. They have become leftists. They've embraced the leftism. Just because you have some sort of fiscal policy, which you don't actually have, mind you, doesn't make you Republican. Doesn't make you in the GOP. It does not make you on the right. Okay? Just because you believe in the right to keep and bear arms, which you guys don't really believe in because you're all for restrictions. Again, you're always about restrictions on rights, and you're for restriction on a right to speak, to worship, to do any number of things. So you're all just a bunch of fucking leftists masquerading as someone on the right. You're Jillian Michaels. Maybe you're a little bit smarter. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're a little better well spoken. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're slightly younger, older, whatever. Maybe you're not. You're all just leftists masquerading as people on the right as conservatives, just like Dave Rubin, child buyer, Dave Rubin, human trafficker, Dave Rubin. Everyone's talking about, oh, I'm on the right because I have these beliefs, although you're all just a bunch of fucking leftists. Anyway, and the people I get the most upset with, the people that I think are letting down this whole thing the most. I've mentioned trigonometry before. Again, I enjoy the show. It's a different perspective. A couple of British transplants talking about things happening over in jolly old England and in the UK. It's nice to have that kind of perspective that I don't have here, living in the best country in the world. So, those two, Francis Foster and Konstantin Kassin, will tell you how they're for free speech, but not all free speech. And these are the people that cause this issue because they can be manipulated as some sort of like verbal sheep because they have it in their mind that you can't say anything like we're not for incitement and we're not for, hateful speech, even though they can't actually define what hateful speech is or incitement to violence or this, that, or the other. They're how you get these things because they're not absolute in the belief. Now, I wouldn't expect them to be because they're not. They're subjects of the crown. They're not free people like we are in the United States of America. They don't understand what that actually means. They come here as visitors, much like aliens, and they don't really understand what it means. And no one really has been able to really express it to them completely. But let me try to do that now. Trigonometry boys. What it means, freedom of speech, means I can say any fucking thing I want to, whether it's good, bad, indifferent, nonsensical, whatever. I can say whatever. Oh, but you can't incite people to violence. Sure I can. Sure I can. There's a legal standard for what incitement to violence really means, set by the Supreme Court, and it is very, very direct. You have to directly tell this guy to do that guy and all of these things, and it has to happen. So it's almost conspiracy. I don't really necessarily agree with it because, again, just like the guys that talk about, well, the United States, even if the state of Israel is trying to get the United States to invade Iraq in 2003, the United States government still has agency. And I would say that about the guy when you say, hey, I want you to punch that guy over there. And this guy goes, I'm going to go punch that guy over there because that guy told me to. Well, that guy has agency. Does he not? He has the agency to do it or not to do it. Well, that's on him. If it's like growing up, maybe they don't have this over there in jolly old England, or, those guys didn't actually grow up in England or the UK. Again, they're both transplants, but the saying of, if someone told you to go jump off a bridge, would you do it? I can hear my mother and my grandmother, and I think even my dad, I can hear it in my head now, them telling me that. Okay. No, I would not jump off the bridge. Never was really quite sure why someone would tell me to jump off a bridge, but no, I'm not going to jump off a fucking bridge, and especially not because someone told me to do it. So these are the people I'm most upset with, is that you love how you have freedom of speech, and you think you have the right to free speech, even though it's not in your Constitution, but you are for limiting it. And that's where the creep comes. That's how it creeps in. That's where it comes from. Because don't get me wrong, I don't want to see anyone hurt, verbally or otherwise, but it's, again, another saying, sticks and stones might break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Apparently, 5 years ago when the so-called right was saying things like that, apparently they've forgotten it, or they just never really actually believed in it, which is more likely the case, that the Ben Shapiro's, Mark Levin's of the world, Dave Rubin's, all of those people never really truly believed what they were telling you. They were just doing it for the clicks. They were just trying to get everything to happen. They were trying to gain power. They were trying to do things behind the scenes, and that's fine. I mean, I would like you to be honest about it, but you're never going to be honest about it. And I should probably be fair to Miss Jillian Michaels, who still has not reached out in regards to the gauntlet she threw down. She may be an innocent actor in this whole deal and really just trying to find out the truth or what have you. and could just be kind of almost like a useful idiot. I don't know. I don't mean that in a negative connotation, but it's the only kind of phrase that I come up with on the fly. And since this is live, I couldn't stop and then edited this whole thing. So I wanted to touch on data centers. I'm kind of indifferent to data centers. I also see them as like inevitable. There's really nothing you can do about them. I mean, I'm doing an internet show right now over multiple data servers, I'm sure. But one of the things I find pretty hilarious, let's start here. The issues I've heard people bring up about data centers are government created issues. That they use a whole bunch of water and that they use a whole bunch of electricity. And in regards to the electricity, they use so much electricity in the areas that they're in, the electricity bills go up in that area for the citizens of that place. Not a cool thing. How is this the government's fault? This is the government's fault because we should be running on nuclear and should have been for the last 50 to 60 years. Electricity in this country should be cheap and plentiful. But all of the red tape, all of the nonsense, all of the BS has stifled nuclear power in this country. And if you wanted to build a nuclear power plant tomorrow, it's probably going to be in the neighborhood of 20 years before it's online. Not because it takes that long to build it, but because of environmental impact studies, all of the government red tape, all of these different things. And let's dispel some myths right now about nuclear power. Nuclear power plants do not just blow up like nuclear bombs. It's two different ways. They're not the same. I know all of you pro-Iran war people don't understand that nuclear power is much different than nuclear weapons. Oh, but they enriched to 60%. Why did they stop at 60? Why didn't they go to 90 when it's weapons grade? Again, no one can answer that question in regards to Iran, but we're talking about data centers. So, nuclear power plants do not just explode. Oh, well, what if there's an accident? Fukushima. Yeah, well, I don't know if your local municipality gets hit by a goddamn tsunami and it takes out your nuclear power plant, which you didn't sufficiently protect from a tsunami when you're an island nation. Well, yeah, things happen. But no one died because of the release. And again, the plant did not explode. Actually, a tsunami is not the worst thing that can hit a power plant because they use water to cool the rods in the whole system. And that's also what they use to create steam, which is what creates electricity, but we're not going to get into all that today. The water coming in there actually cooled off the core, so it's not a bad deal. It's not going to melt down. Even with 3 Mile Island, even with the hit piece, all of the hit pieces out there, and all of the hit piece kind of documentaries, quote unquote, on 3 Mile Island, you had a guy who went into the core when it was at its worst, I think, starting to melt down. He went in there without protection. That guy's still alive, and that was in like 1968 or 1973 or what. That guy's lived for 40 years. He does not have cancer. He has no ill effects. He was exposed to radiation. The Geiger meter went nuts, and they put it up next to him. The dude was exposed to straight up radiation at the source. He's fine. He's not glowing or nothing. He has 2 eyes, 2 arms, 2 legs, 10 fingers, 10 toes. He didn't grow a second head, nothing. So it's, first of all, it's not even universal. It's almost like lung cancer. Like, just because you smoke doesn't mean you're going to get lung cancer, and just because you don't smoke doesn't mean you're not going to get lung cancer. So I don't know. It's a very odd thing. But the other thing about data centers that's hilarious to me, and the only reason that I even like this issue, so in my area, they're talking about putting in data centers. First of all, there's been a data center somewhat in my area, about 20, 30 miles away, for 10 years, maybe longer. They acknowledged it like 5 years ago. But anyway, what's hilarious to me, and the reason that am talking about it and have been seeing it, is because they're proposing more data centers in my area, in the northeastern Oklahoma area. And I have a Facebook for work because I have to. And so I see all of the crazy nutters on Facebook talking about data centers, which, for the smarter of you who are listening to this and heard what I just said, that people are complaining about data centers on Facebook, that should be quite ironic and funny to you that you're taking to one of the main platforms requiring a data center to complain about said data centers. I even saw a post today that was just chef's kiss of hypocrisy on a data center on Facebook in a group that someone said, where can I get a no data center sign? One person said it's best to make your own. Shout out to them, although you posted it on a platform, but hey. And then another person sent a screenshot from Amazon and said, Amazon has them on there, go there. I don't know, Amazon Web Services, they have, servers, data centers. They're all into AI. It's an AI race. So every one of them's into the AI race. But again, these are all government-created problems. And then apparently these data centers, some of them want to put in their own power plants, but that's a no-go depending on the area because, again, the government's like, nope, you can't put in your own power plant because we have to do this, and this, and this, and this, and it's a decade before it'll be started. Well, we need it tomorrow. Actually, we needed it yesterday. So, again, the government gets in the way and is creating an issue where there should not be an issue. It will be funny, though, when all the data center people who talk about how, it's going to bring some jobs and this and that, which they don't really provide a whole bunch of jobs. But they do provide some jobs, and they do provide some tax revenue. But it's going to be funny when they just fill the 200 jobs it does create with a whole bunch of H-1B visas, because all of these folks on the right, Ben Shapiro's of the world, Donald Trump's of the world, Marco Rubio's, all these guys, tell us how we need H-1B visas from India. The old dots need to come over here because we're too goddamn stupid, don't know how to run a damn data center or something. So that's funny. That will lead me into the Palisades fire. And I'm going to play you a video from the great Adam Carolla. Adam Carolla, if you're not familiar, first of all, correct that. But Adam Carolla has been doing a vlog ever since the Palisades fire from, I think, 18 months ago, ever since it started. The day, I think he did one the next day. He did a podcast like the next day in a hotel room. And then he's been doing this vlog and showing how they've been taking the structures down, cleaning them up, this, that, and the other. But this is his most recent one. And I'm just going to play a little bit of this. And just kind of dissect the video. But this is the great Adam Carolla. This will probably give me a strike, but whatever.
All right, so an update on the lot we've been following the progress on. I learned a few things because I spoke to the foreman who's not here all the time, but I spoke to the guy in charge of this a couple of days ago off camera, and he told me a few things. One is this black plywood's called phenolic plywood. It has a coating on it. This is not permanent. This is going to be formed. This is the form. The concrete slab and the grade beams or the bond beams are going on top of this, and then they're going to strip this. Underneath, what you see here is probably about 7 or 8 feet of shoring and headers, and the plywood goes down on top of that, and then they will put the rebar down on top of that plywood with a spacer, and they'll space it up because the slab is 13 inches thick. That's a 13-inch slab. So a standard home would have a 4-inch slab. A home that was a bigger, more substantial home, maybe a garage floor, would have like a 6-inch slab. Airport runways are 13 inches thick. That's airport thickness. So this house is going to have a 13-inch thick slab. It's going to have number 5 rebar. Number 5 is 5/8, 12 inches on center. So they're going to make a checkerboard of 5/8 rebar that is going to be in the center of this 13-inch slab. The grade beams are going to...
Okay, why am I playing this, you ask? Well, the reason I'm playing this is, one, Adam Carolla is the greatest human being to ever live. Not really, but he is quite awesome. California is known for a lot of things. One being fucked up, 2 being homeless, and 3rd being like the epicenter of the climate crisis, or at least the climate nutters. They have been, if you ever did anything in like the automotive world and modification, most of your modifications are not CARB legal. The California Air Resources Board had their own thing. So like they've been the tip of the spear of climate. And there's still the tip of the spear in the climate lie. When you're talking about rebuilding, okay, let's just take them at their word that they do care about the climate. The Gavin Newsoms, the Karen Basses, all the powers that be, and even the people that prop them up, the actors and actresses, and all the other nutters that vote for them and donate to them and all that. Let's take them at face value that they actually do care about the climate. Let's take the fire itself. Probably caused a lot of carbon to go into the air atmosphere, but let's take that out of the equation. If you just take the building code, so no homeowner would rebuild this way with 13 inches of concrete and number 5 rebar, 5/8 inch rebar. That's a ton of rebar. That's a ton of like literal tons of concrete and tons of rebar. These things, especially rebar, which if you're not familiar is basically just like it's long bar stock that's reinforced that has little ridges on the side. That is steel. It's hardcore steel. I don't know if you're familiar how you make steel. It's not a clean process. Without even getting into like mining the iron ore, but just making the steel itself probably pollutes. I would probably assume. Same thing with concrete. To make the concrete, bring the concrete, do all of the things. Probably pollutes. Probably pollutes. Yes, Jake, I see your comment. I know 5/8 rebar is common in residential construction, but not with 13 inches of concrete on it. Now, if you're going to do a concrete slab, you're going to put rebar in it because you want that slab to be strong and not crack and last over time. And even in my area now, we have the occasional earthquake, and that will kind of earthquake-proof your slab. 13 inches is just insane overkill. So if you really care about the climate, you would at least factor that in on your rebuilding process of your permitting, of your what have you. By the way, these homes, it was a little bit earlier in the clip, but these homes that got destroyed, most of them have been there since like the 30s and the 40s and were built out of wood. And you go, oh, well, that's why they burned down, is they're built out of wood. Well, they didn't burn down for like 80 years, so there's that. And wood is more of a natural product. I don't know if you guys knew that. So impact on the environment seems a little bit less. I don't know. But all of these things are at the behest of the local building codes. This is just the foundation. This is not one stick of board, nothing. This is not one nail has been driven yet. This is just the base. 13 inches thick. Okay? That's insane. Utterly insane. Let's play a little more of this.
To be tied in to the top of those caissons.
If you look at this, I'm going to go ahead and stop it, go full screen. But those of you just listening, a caisson is basically a giant pier. It's a concrete pier, if you will. It's usually somewhere between 12 to 18 inches thick, radius, length, whatever. Depending on how high up you have to go, the grade of it, it can be 3 feet, 4 feet. But whatever you see above is so below. Put it that way. So this is sunk into the ground. This is poured into the ground, again, with rebar. You want it to be strong. This is overkill. This is all just foundation. This is not natural. Here's the thing about this. So previously, these homes had telephone poles, in essence, were their pier system. A telephone pole will degrade over time and will become part of the earth. Concrete will be there for fucking ever unless you remove it, which costs more climate money, if you will, more damage to the climate to do this. Mind you, I didn't pull the other video from an earlier one of the cleanup, but the state of California mandated not only did every lot have to be not only cleaned, but you had to scrape the dirt down like 12 inches, then transport the dirt somewhere, Not really sure where the dirt actually went. It might have been in the video. I just don't remember. But you're taking the dirt away. And then any of the concrete, most of these houses did have like some sort of concrete structure, slab, whatever. That concrete then had to be trucked. They set this up on a road there in the Palisades. They had this processing facility basically where you use a backhoe to take the concrete, put it in the dump truck drives it up to this processing facility where they then separate the rebar from the concrete. So they had this whole machine and this whole thing. So they would separate it out, and then the rebar would go this way and the concrete would go that way, and they would haul off the rebar, and then they would process the concrete through this giant machine where it would process the concrete down into like basically gravel, which then went into a truck and then went somewhere else. And it's like the amount of fucking diesel you're burning for this nonsense is unbelievable. I understand. Like, they wouldn't let them reuse the damn foundations and whatnot. Anyway, let's get back to the great one.
That's going to be where you see those tunnels going. You see 16, 18 inches thick, 42 inches wide, 36 inches wide. They're going to connect all of those caissons with grade beams and the slab. The grade beams are going to have number 9 rebar in it, which is over 1 inch, which is absurd, insane, and way over engineered. So you have number 5 in the slab, number 9, inch and 1/8. Remember, 8 is 1 inch. And
inch and 1/8 rebar. As Jake points out, the rebar is made in India and shipped on a boat from fucking India to California, and from there shipped by rail and then trucked to the retailer. How much carbon is there just in the shipping of the rebar? God, I don't know. And steel smelted in India and China doesn't count towards carbon emissions. Yeah, it's like, I don't see it, so it ain't real, or different zip code or something. It's just like the amount of carbon, it is so California to be like, well, I don't see it, so it's not real. It's like, I don't know, it seems fucking real. If this is all real, which it's not real, but these nutters believe it's real. Bill Maher believes it's real, so there's that. But anyway, inch and 1/8 rebar. That you have to move that with a fucking backhoe or like 5 guys. If that's like a 12-foot piece of inch and 1/8 or 10-foot piece, good Lord, that is Jesus. All right, back to the video.
A 13-inch slab. He told me they're going to have 300 yards in the grade beams and the slab, and they'll pour it all in one day, and they'll pump it all in one day. And they'll do it on a Saturday because there's less traffic. So they will get 30 trucks.
30 trucks. So many trucks, they need to do it on a Saturday when there's less traffic. 30 diesel-burning trucks loaded to the hilt with concrete to pour a 13-inch slab for a not huge home. This is the slab. The home is not made out of concrete. This is just the slab. This is just what it's going to sit on. But we care about the climate, guys. We care.
30 concrete trucks are going to pour this single-family residence home. 30. All in, there's going to be 3,000 yards of concrete, which is 300 cement trucks or concrete trucks. So 300 yards for the slab, 3,000 all in with the caissons, the grade beams, and the seawall for a single family residence. And they still have to build a house when they're done. And by the way, it's $3 million. So 3 million, 3,000 yards, 300 in the slab. That's what they're building. The seawall keeps going. They're actually going to extend the deck. They're going to cantilever the deck over the last caissons out there.
$3 million just in a foundation, just so you can then build a home. $3 million. Now, apparently they have the money. Good for them. But my God, $3 million. $3 million just in the foundation. Just so you can then hopefully build a house on top of it.
About 10 feet. So they're gonna form it all up, and they're gonna go straight out with the slab, and they're gonna keep the slab going 10 feet worth of deck past where the last caissons are to create an overhang. Well, I guess we should go down and see what's down there. Yeah, this is going to be the shoring for the cantilevered deck. Then 10 foot past those last set of caissons to the next job. Now, remember, with this job and this home, the existing home that was here, that was built in the 60s, had zero concrete in the foundation. Zero. All pylons that were mashed into the ground. All wooden pylons. This is what a year and a half's progress looks like along this beach.
Utter devastation.
The old house was built on these telephone poles. By the way, it was here for 30 years on telephone poles. It got retrofitted with fiberglass later on. Initially, this stuff was just this. These homes sat unchanged and unmoved for 50, 60, 70 years, untouched, unmoved. Obviously the fire got them, but the sea never touched them and never moved them. Like I said, some were retrofitted.
That's what it was before, was telephone poles. But now, in the infinite wisdom of the state of California and the city of Los Angeles, who cares about the climate, you're going to need somewhere in the neighborhood of like 3,000 concrete trucks to bring in concrete to pour a 13-inch slab with rebar, 13-inch slab like airports use, and the pylons and casings just to hopefully build a house on top of it, which is absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. But it gets a little more insane. See if I can find it here. Yeah. Go back here.
A year and a half later, we have an empty aqueduct. So that would seem to be the water source to fill the hydrants, to put the fires out. And a year and a half in, it is bone dry. I think there's a leadership problem in this town.
So, still empty after a fire. After a devastating fire, it's still empty. A year and a half later, they still haven't filled the reservoir, the aqueduct, whatever we're calling it, the water retention pond. It's just bare concrete. Yet again, concrete strikes again. It would seem to me that you might want some fucking water in that area. At least it looks a little green, so maybe it won't burn as much. But my God, an empty aqueduct, yet again, nothing to put the fire out. If it starts again, nothing. Mind you, the carbon release during the fire is immense, but nothing. All right. Unbelievable. But it's like uniquely California and stupid, so there's that. All right, so we're back. Now, this next story that I'm going to tackle is so wild and so amazing that it's beyond belief. I almost didn't want to talk about it because I expect something else to come out that just kind of proves everybody wrong, and we go, oh well, we should have known. But it's just so it's too much. J.P. Morgan Chase, apparently, according to one person, is pro-sex slave, according to a lawsuit that was filed. J.P. Morgan Chase houses sex slaves. A sex slave. At least they were alleged to have done that. For those of you not familiar, we are going to seek the reporting of the New York Post in a bombshell sexual harassment suit. But first, we are going to share a screen. We're going to try to share a screen. Producing! And share. So, this is from the New York Post. Bombshell sex harassment suit against Lorna Hajdini, whatever. J.P. Morgan branded complete fabrication as John Doe is unmasked. Before we get to John Doe, let me show you Lorna here. So this is Lorna. She's the executive. Looks like a very tough, strong woman. Definitely a woman. So Lorna is accused of keeping a male sex slave, in essence, in a lawsuit that was filed. Problem with filing a lawsuit is now you cannot remain anonymous, John Doe. So John Doe claims, John Doe, by the way, is Chirayu Rana, is now accused of fabricating sexual harassment claims against a high-ranking executive at the bank after an internal investigation found no evidence of wrongdoing. Rana's suit filed on Monday under the pseudonym John Doe accuses the 37-year-old executive director of turning him into her, quote, sex slave by drugging him with Rohypnol and Viagra and threatening to slash his bonus if he did not comply. So when everyone first saw our accused here, everyone on the interwebs was like, so can I put in an application? Sounds like you guys are hiring. What are the qualifications? Things of that nature. Men are horrible. I get it. But it's still pretty awesome. And then this fine specimen popped up as John Doe. And then everyone said, bullshit. Look at that face. Why the long face, fella? He looks like the Indian, like the dot version of Woody from Toy Story now that I look at him. Look at her. Look at him. How dare he? Anyway. Back to the article. So, drugged him, fed him Viagra for insatiable appetite. Of course, Lorna categorically denies the allegation, never engaged in any inappropriate conduct, and J.P. Morgan Chase agrees. The funny thing about this is that J.P. Morgan Chase offered this cat a little over $1 million just to shut up and go away, and he said, no, we want like $12 million. So they, I guess, I don't know, dug in further. It's still kind of early on here, so it's I don't know. It's just really odd. It's funny too because as the Post reports here, the Post has also learned that Rana did not report to Hajdini. The two are simply colleagues on the leveraged finance team, which works on large-scale acquisitions, mergers, and buyouts. Somebody had a merger. Okay. She's apparently Hajdini, who still works for J.P. Morgan, is viewed internally as a, quote, top performer. Good for her. it's just wild. Like, dude, you know, if you're gonna claim this shit, don't look like that. Um, I don't know, man. Like, it's just wild. Like, it's just um, yeah, Jake. It's already it all got dropped. It's just fucking wild, man. Like, I mean, come on. I mean, first of all, like the victim shaming here. If we're gonna say this guy was a victim, one, warranted. Two, needed to happen. Three, quit being a bitch and come on. Like, I mean, that's just well done, Jake. I bet she's a top performer. She's very dominant in her field, Jake. Um, look, man. I, I, I don't. I'm such at a loss for words, and it's like, what do you say to this? Like, oh, you poor baby. I mean, it's on the level, and I know I've had friends of mine who are like, can't believe that I say these things, but it's like, it's along the lines of the like, when you see the teacher who slept with the student, when it's a female teacher sleeping with a male student. The other way, it's just complete wood chipper kind of material. But it's like when the female teacher sleeps with the male student who's like 15 or 16, and you see the teacher and like, really? Like, damn. And it's just, you know, you judge these things based on appearance, and I don't care what anyone says. It's like when it first came out and we saw her picture, it was like, well, I don't know, man. Sounds like some woman's abusing her position. And then you, the jokes just write themselves. She was abusing a position, all right. But it's like, you kind of do that like, well, I don't know, man. Like, was it that bad or whatever? And then you like think, well, maybe it's a female is the victim here. And so you're like, well, that's kind of fucked up in our modern New York society here. And then you see the old Punham on the Punjab here, and you're like, dude, stop. You should be so lucky. Like, you're getting... She's doing all right, obviously. She's an executive for J.P. Morgan. According to that article, she has like a almost $2 million apartment in Manhattan. She probably doesn't buy much in Manhattan, but it's like... fed you Rohypnol and Viagra. You know, there was one in a different article I saw where he accused her, or a witness said that he said, Woody Gupta. I didn't see that one. That's fucking great, Jake. There was another one where allegedly he was sleeping on her couch for some reason. Not really sure why he was sleeping on her couch. I know why he's sleeping. Well, anyway, that digress. That she allegedly came, sat on the couch, lit a cigarette, said that she owned him, and was inviting, she was drunk, allegedly, lights a cigarette and basically says, come join me in this threesome. Just stop, man. Like, you could, and then there was another one where allegedly she said, look at these cannons or whatever, and it's like, yeah, look. I mean... What do you say here? With the old, Dot Woody over here, and it's like, dude, the first world problems. I mean, my God. What's his next complaint? She took me out and paid for everything? What a bitch. Oh no, we went to she bought dinner and drinks, and I tried to pay, and she slapped me over the face and said, don't you dare pay. And then we went back to her place. It's like, it just... What? Oh, the blowjobs were too good. Like, what are you complaining about here, man? If you were a married man, you just would have quit your job. And maybe he is married. I don't fucking know. But you're just you're a scam artist. Why are they always scam artists? See, this is the whole thing like I was talking about before, where they want to censor you for saying things about certain groups of people, but you can say all you want about the old dots here and how they're scam artists and they're always looking for a way to get over, and they can't get out of the way of trains, and it's like then you're invited to run a small train and you're like, no, I don't like those kind of trains. I like the actual trains. And it's like, what the fuck are we even talking about here, man? it's just this story is just, it can't be real, right? Like there's more to this, and we're gonna find out that this is like some sort of something and what have you. I don't even know. Maybe they were both in on it, maybe they weren't. I don't know, but it's just like this story's so crazy. If she looked like some fucking shrew, maybe people would believe you, but it's like, no, man. And then you see some of the other pictures. I mean, I don't think that's AI, but I don't know. She looks well qualified. That's all I'm going to say. She looks well qualified. But anyway, it's pretty much all I got for tonight. Thanks for everybody for listening. Thanks for doing all the things. Go to Die Free Co. and enter code Toxic10 for 10% off all of the products there. They're always running specials. They're always doing different things. But till next time, everybody, stay safe, have fun, and we'll see you next time. Peace.